Good morning, this is Dr. Renata Teresa Tadashi. I'm gonna now speak about treason. I saw that someone published that the President of the United States, the current one, Donald Trump, is being accused of treason. That in press release, it has to have some basis, because if things that are released do not have any basis, and it is possible to know that, then that creates damage to the supervision of federal government over the 50 states plus the colonies. How is that manifested? Well, it's manifested in being attacked by police not doing work, for instance, having developmental agencies do whatever they please, overt corruption, and then use of military to be able to restore order. So that is why press releases that release accusations of a head of the state in the so-called presidential system, they have to be based in an actual suspicion of crime or crime, and in article when released, the same as video or any sort of a live statement. It has to have basis and state in that article or video release what that basis is. If not, that is reportable to Federal Bureau of Investigation or to presidential office, and persons who do so should should go to jail and have the license to represent any sort of organization with their press releases removed. That means there are independent press releases that also is possible to investigate what is social damage. If social damage is such that it leads to destabilization of the country, in which persons are unable, for instance, to use normal organizations such as DMV, such as social services, such as other institutions, then that is an outcome of having in press not based in more than personal hatred or sadness, releases of accusations with legal basis. It is very different to go to a friend and or a worker of any sorts and say, I am deeply sorry because I feel that you've let me down. You've let me down, you've done this and that, and I am also very upset because I don't know how it is that I've been so good and you've hurt me. That is an example of having an anger or sadness that is a basis of being disappointed in somebody else's behavior. That deception then is translated into an intent to explain to the other where that pain towards that person that shapes new relationship comes from. To be able to be a journalist, okay, it is possible to know if one is a journalist or not, regardless if one is acclaimed as such, okay. It has to have that article a outcome in greater good, and so that is not never protection of one person at expense of lives of another, and that means that one person is also not targeted to be killed when it is a person who is in charge. Because if we do so, then one person who is in charge, like a domino pieces, it tumbles down all of the structures and makes us all not only vulnerable from the outside, but vulnerable from one another. It brings fear of policemen or policewomen to be able to obtain a proper respect when there are different cultures. It brings fear to be not protected when doing something wrong and admitting to crimes. So press release now treason. I'm gonna talk this few videos about treason. Treason of the President of the United States, like in, well, I will concentrate on the United States. That's what I've studied, because I did plan to go to law school since my mother was pregnant with me. However, I changed to medicine when I've decided that I had enough and that would actually impede practice of those human rights, and the death of my father marked that a lot. And I don't regret it. I think that medical school and my medical education has given me a great deal of experience that I needed, and also knowledge, both practical and theoretical ones. That I would like to first talk about the thing that I studied, that is also in classes about the system similar to United States, or the United States system called presidential system. I'm not gonna give now civic education. I can do that later on. However, I want to touch the topic of treason. Treason means that person was committed an act either in speech or in person that was as a result protective towards a selective group or self at expense of life or harm of others. And treason is in many cases derived from cheating. Cheating is when a person is married to a person with whom that person does not share sexual relationship, but loving relationship, and that sexual relationship then, based on an instinct, is sabotaged outside of that marriage somewhere else. I in no way suspect that in case of Donald Trump, because his wife is actually seemingly quite on same page with him, which means that that seems to be indicative of having enough natural law, which is desire to marry a couple to have children, however no time. And so if that happens, that is why I'm trying to explain, when that happens, then that person went to have an emotional involvement that presented the doings of the spouse, that whatever that was, in a light of being not favorable to well-being or survival even of the other spouse of the couple, which means that it does not mean sex. It means that somebody has loyalty outside of own marriage, and that is then emotionally most common reason to have that accusation of treason, meaning that person has had an affair, emotional affair, that caused in desire suspicions that the spouse is disloyal on one and intends to harm or kill that spouse. And so that means the couple does not have sex, is not capable of it anymore because of accumulated index of rejections towards one another, to favor another person or another activity or group of persons. So persons feel that I've been let down enough times, and therefore that other one does not love me, and so that is the basis, and I cannot trust. Treason, so presidential system, it's a couple of people. Treason is when that person is, for instance, it can be towards the spouse, is preferring, for instance, if promoting a couple's marriage, to have others destroyed or take non-action than have no sex and no children. That is to a degree of being criticized to present as bad to be a spouse, one or the other, or interfere directly by intense disrespecting marriage, intends to seduce one or another, which have to be direct, meaning the persons intend to be together, and someone else approaches to undermine the role or love of one another, to say, I do not want you to be a marriage because I actually am going now to skip your spouse and speak only to you, and I'm gonna be in this kind of conviction, or and send a message that you are inferior to me emotionally, which means he has more loyalty and love towards me, and you are, for instance, silly, that is common, ridiculous, etc. That happens often. And then if there's sexual relationship, spouse has an instinct to protect that significant other. If that sexual relationship is questioned or non-stop undermined, that marriage is vulnerable to having others, and then emotional, for instance, bond towards a person who appears as superior is stronger and undermines the respect for someone who is a mother of children every day potentially. That is what it is. And treason, what is this? What's treason? Treason is disloyalty that it is derived from disloyalty that is against non-selective survival, meaning a person does not side up with well-being of own and of others when contrasted with such choices and such are actions towards the government. And so, for instance, treason is a person asked to choose between having a coffee in a restaurant and having right now someone droning and yelling, "Help, help, Mr. President," or delegate to someone says that person, it's some sort of advisor of mine. It's better, even though even if country collapses, it's better that the person there that is my advisor dies, and I'm gonna have a coffee. And when that person is dead, the whole government will be destabilized, and that is when I will be able to finally resume work at hotels. That's an example of treason. You see, and things like that. If that were the case, which I do not see because the president is working, went to rally and is making an effort, that is not a campaign. Active president is not campaigning, active president is working, plus going to place, from place to place to declare what it is that he has so far done and what yet is remaining to be done. And treason has to be visible in press releases when that appears as a statement. These are the facts. That was an anecdotal example. It never happened. I'm just saying it has to be described what that press discovered. It cannot be a buzzword because a few million persons depend on being debriefed from someone and being also depend on being guided somehow and also protected, including president. So if a president committed treason, president may not obtain food. If president committed treason, he may not be able to obtain necessary medical assistance. Or he may not be able to, for instance, keep marriage together. So you better, when you release such article, have some basis to it because it is punishable under law of the United States and international one to have person in public surrounded and harassed non-stop. And that is in disregard of my preferences, political or otherwise. As an independent consultant, I can tell you that these releases, they not that they have to stop. They don't. If you find out something that has basis, release it. However, calm down and put what it is that you've discovered as facts. President, so it requires two things. You need to know what treason is. In personal context, how personal context in corruption has what the dimension is in structures, and in also the context of country and countries. Going with a foreign, for instance, donation from another country in crisis is the opposite of treason, especially if Ivanka has roots in Ukraine. So a press release has to explain, not have buzzword, like a child, a 3-year-old that learned a new word and is running around to stalk, but has to have some basis, otherwise it has to be withdrawn by own federal agency, and the person needs to be warned, said, you cannot call president a treasoner of the country in major newspaper, because that caused that president possibility to supervise own country. And we need it. For instance, I need a driving license, and other persons need other things. That then also being safe from police and a reporting system and things like that. And no one is there to help. And that is because of these articles instead of work.